Last week, I got my hands on the two latest action cameras from the two biggest brands, GoPro with the Hero 13 and DJI with the Action 5 Pro. Now, that wasn't a review video, but this one is. I'm going to review the Action 5 Pro, and even though technically this is a sponsored video, I'm going to be as brutally honest as possible. And starting with a little bit of honesty, when I first thought about making a review video, I didn't really know what to do because I've actually been a little bit underwhelmed by this camera. But then I made a pros and cons list, and the pro list actually started to get quite long, and I realized there's actually a lot going on in this camera that I like. But don't get me wrong, it's not the perfect camera, but is it worth getting if you already have an Action 4? Let's take a look through my pros and cons list, and then we'll make a decision at the end. First, the physical points. The Action 5 Pro is the same size and weight, within a couple of grams, as the Action 4, which is no bad thing as they're both smaller and lighter than a full-size GoPro. As someone who suffers with chronic neck pain, I'm conscious of adding weight to my helmet and making my pain worse, so smaller and lighter is definitely a good thing. Although if you add the DJI cage, it does end up making it about the same size and weight as the GoPro. Now, as a rider, I'm often out wearing gloves or out in the cold and get cold hands, and I often struggle with the GoPro to open the battery door. Now, fortunately, with the Action 4 and Action 5 Pro, it is so easy to open the door even with gloves or cold hands, and with a bit of practice, you can even do it one-handed. Speaking of doors, another great point carried over from the Action 4 is the smart way the doors are allocated. The battery door also hides the SD card, and the only time you need to open it is to change the battery or card, meaning that 100% of the time riding, this door is waterproof. If you want to add accessories like an audio adapter, there's a separate door for this, meaning your battery and card can stay safe. One of my biggest complaints with the GoPro has been that everything is under the same door. So if you want to use the USB port, you open up the battery and card to the elements. Even with pass-through doors, there's still a risk. GoPro have improved the system with the new weatherproof magnetic charger accessory, but if you still want to use the USB for audio, then the battery and SD card will still be at risk. The Action 5 Pro uses the same magnetic mounts as the 4, which is really convenient, but I do have a couple of niggles with this, which I'll come to later. Like the Action 4, the Action 5 Pro has a front touchscreen. This makes it possible to change the settings even when the camera is in tight spots and you can't get behind it, unlike a GoPro which doesn't have a front touchscreen. Another feature this shares with the Action 4 and GoPro is replaceable glass. I consider this vital for an action camera because you're gonna crash and this is easy to smash. And if it's not replaceable, then that's your camera ruined. And that's one of the main reasons why I don't use an Insta360 Ace Pro because, yeah, you can't replace the glass. Now, I mentioned that GoPro now offer ND filters, whereas DJI have been offering theirs for quite a while. You simply have to remove the rubber ring from outside the lens, get your ND filter, and it simply slots over the top, and that is quite a secure fit. The only downside to this compared with GoPros is that you then have to manually adjust the settings in the camera to match whatever filter you're running, whereas GoPro will automatically match it. And that's one reason why I tend not to use ND filters, because I actually get the settings wrong quite often and end up ruining my clips. But at least it's nice to have the option of an ND filter if you're a bit more skilled with cameras than I am. One feature I actually really like about DJI's, and the Action 4 had this as well, is the noises it makes. So when you switch it on, for example, it makes quite an obvious noise that that is turned on, and when you switch it off, it's quite obvious that that's now off. And the same can be said for recording. And when you stop recording. So as an example, when I switch on the GoPro, it just gives you beeps. And when you switch off the GoPro, it gives you the same beeps, but just more of them. And it's up to you to remember how many beeps is on and off. Now, it sounds stupid, but there's definitely been times when I've switched on my GoPro when I thought I was switching it off, or I switched it off when I thought I was switching it on. Because when you're out and about, there's a bit of wind noise. Sometimes you might not quite hear the first beep, or basically your hearing is impaired a little bit. So by having just the same beeps, but just different numbers of them, it makes it less obvious. And the same can be said when you record as well. You just get a single beep, and when you stop recording, you get the same beeps but just in a different pattern. And again, it sounds stupid, but I have started recording when I thought I was stopping recording, and I've stopped recording when I thought I started recording, and I've actually lost some pretty decent clips just because I got confused by the noises. So yeah, it's just a little thing, but I just like the DJI noises, just because it means a goofus like me knows whether I've started or stopped recording a little bit easier. And also just a little thing, but I just had to swap the SD card from this to the GoPro Hero 13, and it made me remember how much easier it is to actually remove the SD card from the DJI. I can just do it by hand easily. With the GoPro, it sits slightly deeper, and it can be quite hard to get in there and get it out, especially if you're wearing gloves. And actually, forget it if you're wearing gloves, you're not going to get that out. Now, I did actually manage that by hand then, but it was tricky. Sometimes I have to go and find a tool to do it, or in most cases, I'll just remove the battery and then I can get it in and out easy. But yeah, having to remove the battery nearly every time is a little bit of a pain in the ass. Well, speaking of batteries, I've not used the 5 enough to tell if it's a big improvement over the 4, but it is certainly better than the GoPro. When recording my last video, my GoPro was at 100% at the start of the day, and by the time I'd got the camera in position, in the right setting, got a very quick test clip and reviewed it, it was already down to 86%. The DJI went through the same process but was still at 97%. I had to charge the GoPro battery halfway through filming, which took 30 minutes to get to about 65%. The DJI was still at over 30% battery, but I changed it anyway because I could. DJI supply 3 with the camera compared with just 1 with the GoPro. And carrying on with batteries, just like the Action 4, the 5 Pro isn't just supplied with 3 batteries, but also a great charger and carrying case. Now this thing is great. It charges quickly, I think it's 15 minutes to get to 80% charged, and it keeps them organized. It's absolutely a highlight. That's not the only cool accessory though. It does come separately, but if you want a great audio option and the wireless mic doesn't fit your needs, then DJI's audio adapter is a good bit of kit. It replaces the USB-C door and physically clicks into place using the door's hardware. This creates a super strong and reliable connection, giving you much better audio. I use this adapter when vlogging to hook up a shotgun mic. Now the really cool thing is that when it is hooked up, you get a nice visual representation of the volume levels, and it just lets you know that everything's working nicely. And sometimes for the clearest audio when riding my mountain bike, I'll even hook up a lav mic. There are 2 downsides to this though. With the adapter fitted, your camera is no longer waterproof. But like I said earlier, at least your SD card and battery are always protected. The other point, which is a relatively small one, is you now have a door which is loose and can be lost. Now fortunately I've taken extra care and I've never lost one on any of the cameras I've got, but it is possible. Continuing with audio, and once again like the Action 4, the DJI Mic 2 works seamlessly with the 5 Pro. The camera contains a receiver, so you don't need to add an external one. You can actually link 2 Mic 2s with a 5, which is an improvement over the 4. As cool as this is, I don't think it's perfect. I've had some issues, which I'll mention later. So yeah, it's got pretty much all the physical points I like about the Action 4. But what about software and filming? A quick disclaimer though, having just used the camera for 1 day, I can't comment on all the filming modes and settings. But here are some points that I like. I'll start with a biggie. I love the built-in storage. 47 gigabytes is a decent amount and would have been a godsend the couple of times I've gone filming and forgotten my SD card. I'm surprised it's taken this long to even be a thing, as it's such an obvious benefit. A feature I'm yet to test in my day-to-day filming, but has potential to be a real bonus, is the tracking mode. I did test this in my last video, but I have to admit, it was a bit of an extreme test, as the pump track had some turns that were simply too tight for the tracking to work. It also cropped in the footage, so it's not something I'm in a hurry to use when riding, but when I'm filming solo and have the camera locked off on a tripod, having some motion from the camera following me would not only look more dynamic and keep me in the frame better, but would save me a lot of editing time. This is just a hopeful prediction though, as I'm yet to actually test it this way. Now I mentioned audio adapters earlier, but one thing I'm really impressed with is the audio straight from the camera. The Action 4 was good in this regard too. Either the mics are just better placed or the noise cancelling software is just really good at its job. I've never known cameras give better audio when out on a mountain bike.
We've got squirrels over here. I had to slow down for him then. Two-wheel drift.
I used to always need to record external audio with GoPros. However, it's not necessarily needed with the DJI, which is nice when you want to carry light and not have the extra faff of another mic and wires. But one update with the 5 Pro is the option to record backup audio. Now it's the same audio recorded separately from the footage rather than higher or lower gain, so has limited use, but could be handy for some. 2 other good points carry on over from the Action 4, the impressive low light performance and the vertical filming. I honestly think the low light performance is one of DJI's trump cards. Now don't get me wrong, it has its limitations, but it's just in another league compared with the GoPros once the light starts to fade. It's also so easy to get good vertical footage from this camera. With the supplied cage, the camera now has a vertical magnetic mount. You don't need to change any menu settings, simply unclip the camera and reattach it vertically. You keep the same super wide angles, which works really nicely for mountain bike POV shots. This is vastly superior to GoPro. Firstly, there's no way to mount the camera vertically without buying aftermarket accessories. You can film vertically with the camera still mounted horizontally, which to be fair, DJI can't do, but to do this, you have to go into the menu and change the settings. Annoyingly, you've still got to make sure that all the other settings still match, as I found GoPro won't keep settings between modes, which has caught me out more than once. To rub salt in the wounds, the vertical footage in this mode is cropped in, which simply ruins POV clips. Speaking of field of view, the widest setting on the DJI is pretty wide. There is some distortion around the edges, but not as much as the GoPro. Now I have a point I'll make about that in a moment, but for now I'll mention how wide the angle is great for POV stuff, but I also really like the de-warp mode for standard vlog filming. I've been using the Action 4 as my main vlogging camera for the past year in this mode, and I've liked how it looks. I appreciate the camera can be so wide, yet still be able to look normal when needed. There is a price to pay though. I mentioned the lack of distortion. Now most people see this as a good thing, which it absolutely is if you're vlogging in this mode. However, for bike POV clips, distortion can be a great thing for adding the essence of speed. The GoPro has slightly more distortion as standard, but if you add the wide angle lens mod, it really ramps it up with a wider POV too. Now I still think the GoPro with this lens mod simply has the best look for mountain bike POV, but at a cost. With this lens fitted, which I don't have now because I don't have it, you can't get the normal de-warp style clips, so it simply doesn't work for vlogging, which limits the use of the camera when fitted. The DJI might not look quite as good or fast as the GoPro with the wide angle lens, but it is more versatile with it still looking good for POV and vlogging. Though to be fair, the GoPro with its standard lens now does have the same versatility as the DJI. Moving on, a feature I like to use when vlogging is the horizon leveling. There's definitely been times I've handed the camera to someone to film and they've not held it straight. Horizon leveling means the filmer can be a bit sloppy and you still get level clips. There's now 360-degree leveling, which takes it to another extreme. You're guaranteed level clips no matter if the filmer trips or likes to do Michael Jackson leans. The footage does crop in for these modes and it's only available in 1080p, so that would put me off using this feature when riding. But for vlog stuff, when it doesn't need to be quite so wide, this could be a really handy feature. So your clips are nice and level. To make the colours pop, the Action 5 Pro has multiple colour correction modes. They're not as flat as GoPro's option, but as an amateur colour corrector, I do find the DJI easy to adjust and looking good. Lastly, video quality. It's good. I'll be honest, unless a camera is obviously looking like crap, I can't really tell too much difference between the big brands. I think the DJI is crisp and the HDR does a decent job of leveling out the footage. However, I do think it lacks a little contrast though. But when freezing a clip with my bars in shot, I do think the DJI looks sharper than the GoPro, but at the same time, the GoPro seems to have a nicer motion blur, possibly due to slightly more distortion. Being honest, I don't really have any complaints about the quality from either camera when the light is decent. That's my list of things I really like about this camera. Now, I haven't even mentioned the OLED screens, but to be honest with you, I never had any issues with LED ones. But are there any bad things about this camera? Now, when making my pros and cons list, the cons list was actually pretty short, but there are some cons. Well, when I say cons, let's just call them niggles. First niggle is that it's annoying to use a cage to get vertical footage. This adds size and weight, plus makes swapping batteries more work as you have to remove the cage first. I'd love to see vertical built-in mounts on the camera itself. And speaking of mounts, I love the ease of magnetic mounts, but there is a bit of movement when fitted. I'm going to move this up to my mic so you can hear it a little bit better. Now it takes quite a bit of effort to do that, and I haven't had this be an issue with my footage yet, but I'd still rather have a more solid connection and absolutely guarantee there will be no rattling noises. I also don't like how the mount only fits one way. It would be really convenient if you could mount the camera in either direction without needing to unbolt the mount itself. I'd also love to see more lens options like the GoPro. I really do think the extra wide distorted footage with the GoPro and wide angle lens mod looks incredible for fast biking POV footage. It really enhances the feeling of speed and is much easier than using a 360 camera. Now, one rant which I personally only realized after I made the last video, but have seen people mention it online, is the bit rate. I've read that the 5 Pro has half the bit rate of the 4. Now, it's my understanding that the higher the bit rate, the quicker the image information can be processed. You can often tell if a camera is struggling when high detailed scenes get noisy or pixelated. And I think you can see it happen slightly on the leafy ground of my riding clips. All that edge detail can be hard to deal with a lower bit rate. That said, it does help prolong battery life. Now, I've praised the audio a lot, but I have had some hiccups with the Action 4 and the Mic 2. It is convenient not needing a receiver, but when I've committed to this setup when vlogging, I have had the audio cut in and out.
Lost that then.
Now, I'm not sure whether having the transmitter in my pocket and jumping around is pushing its limits too much or what, but I've had a few clips ruined from sketchy audio. Since then, I still choose to use the Mic 2 when I want the best audio, but I run it as a separate audio recorder and not connected to the camera. This way I get audio from my shotgun mic and the Mic 2, giving more options plus backup audio, and it's proved to work very well so far. So in conclusion, the Pro list is a lot longer than the Con list, but is it a worthy upgrade from the Action 4? I guess. Depends what you prioritize in a camera. Do you keep on forgetting SD cards? Then yeah, the Action 5 Pro is worth getting. Do you need 360-degree horizon leveling? Yeah, get one. Do you want to link 2 DJI Mic 2s? This camera is for you. A tracking feature is a new vital need. Get this camera in your life. But you want noticeably better image quality and low light? Save your money. The Action 4 does that. Want a great form factor and magnetic mounts? There's nothing new here. Do you want lens options to open up different filming possibilities? Yeah, GoPro has you covered there. You want higher frame rate options? Again, GoPro has that for you. My conclusion is that the 5 Pro is an excellent camera with some cool new features. Would I have bought this camera having already owned an Action 4 and Hero 12? Personally, and I had to think really hard about this, I don't think I would. The Action 4 does the 2 main things I asked for. Look good when using it as a POV camera, and look good when using it as a vlogging camera. The Action 5 Pro doesn't do these 2 things noticeably better than the 4, and the 4 still has great battery life, a charging case, easy mic connection, and is utterly reliable. I am liking the built-in storage and tracking feature of the 5 Pro, but they're not vital enough for me to spend my money to get. But what about against the Hero 13? I'm undecided. Don't get me wrong, I think the 5 Pro has a lot of features which really does put it above the Hero 13, mainly the form factor, including the way the doors work. Adding audio to this camera is a lot easier than the GoPro, but having not used the GoPro with a few of its accessories like the extra lenses or weatherproof charging, I can't fully comment. But I will tell you that I do think the Action 5 Pro is a fantastic all-round camera. If I wanted one camera to do vlogging and riding POV stuff, I'd probably pick that. If I wanted a camera to just do one thing really well, I think the GoPro with a wide lens mod looks the best for mountain bike POV footage. but then it's not very good for vlogging without the faff of having to change lenses. So my final verdict is this. I'm going to stick with the Action 5 Pro as my main camera. I'm going to use this for vlogging and general POV stuff. I'm going to get a wide angle lens mod for the Hero 13 and have this as my dedicated POV camera. I like to use two cameras when getting POV footage anyway, so I could potentially use the Action 5 Pro as a dedicated vertical camera. Either way, one bonus of using the DJI is to get good audio, and then I can overlay that over the GoPro footage as well. I hope this video was helpful to you. I know I kind of rambled on quite a bit, but there's a lot going on with this camera. Do I think this is the perfect camera? Nah, I don't think there's ever going to be the perfect camera. This one is versatile, but that's also what holds it back. Action cameras have to be suited to such a wide range of uses that what I want might not necessarily be what someone else's want, and vice versa. One thing I would love to see in an action camera, and I think DJI are the perfect brand for this, is a tiny little gimbal action camera. So basically the DJI Pocket 3 in a waterproof, rugged form. Maybe they'll do that in the future, but until then, I'm pretty happy with the Action 5 Pro. But then again, I was happy with the Action 4. So if you've got one of these and some of these features on the Action 5 Pro aren't needed, then save your money. But if you really want the tracking feature, if you really want built-in storage and so on, then yeah, the Action 5 Pro probably is worth the money. But on that bombshell, I hope this video was useful for you. If you're looking at buying a new camera, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next time. So take care everyone, bye bye.